Great white sharks like deep water. The great white sharks won't even come inside between the island and the mainland. Third of a mile. They're on the other side of the island. They like deep water. There are some sharks. In this country, there are a certain number of shark attacks on people every year. Something like 90% of those are in Florida. They're just different species of bull sharks and things I hear about that will come in close to shore. So very rarely do you have a shark attack here. You know, it makes the papers when it happens. So they don't come in close.
So when the elephant seals go away to feed, do they go and eat with other ones, or they just like go the same route but like different paths by themselves, or with a group?
They go by themselves. They don't. It may just be because it's so dark. And remember that most of their life in the ocean is way down deep. So it's hard to form a group when you can't find anybody. It's so dark. They're loners. They really are. They hunt alone. They don't do as orcas, will gang up and find some seals. But they're loners in the ocean. They're very social on land.
When you showed us the picture of the elephant seal splashing sand on him, why was he doing that?
Good question. Why did they splash sand? Why not? Actually, let me tell you, these elephant seals have a huge layer of blubber. They have a layer of blubber that's 4 or 5 inches thick, very thick. That's the insulation, because the deep ocean is cold. So they need to be insulated from the cold ocean. Now they come up on land in the sun, and they're hot. They'll overheat, especially fighting and running around and moving on land. They're not very good at moving on land. They'll overheat. Now they have several ways to cool off. Some of them will go down to the water and splash around in the water. But almost all of them will flip sand on their back, and it looks like they're putting sand up there to keep the sun off it. What they're really doing is digging a hole. They're digging a little hole because when the sun hits the sand, it gets warm right on the surface, on the top of the sand. You can feel it. But push 3 or 4 inches of sand out of the way, it's cool. It's damp and cool. So he's creating a little hole for himself, and he puts his belly down in this cool sand. The insulation layer on the belly is thinner than it is on the back. So he puts his belly down in that cool sand, part of his cooling off process. Good question.
Your hour is up. Should we take how many more questions?
Oh, I don't care. I have no appointments.
How long does it take an elephant seal to molt?
The molting takes about a month. They lose their fur in about a week, or 10 days maybe. And then it takes about another 20 days or so to grow the new fur, which grows right underneath it, as you saw in that one picture. Good.
How long is the average lifespan?
Males live to be about 14 or 15. Females live a little longer. Just like humans. Females live a little bit longer. They live to be maybe 17, 18, 19, something like that. You guys have very good questions. I'm very impressed. I'm so happy you showed up.
So how long does it take for them to float down when they're asleep to the bottom?
It depends on the depth, of course, but it's not very long because they swim the first few hundred feet and then they kind of fall in the current. And when they're over the continental shelf, where it's not so deep, it may be 500 feet deep instead of 5,000, it's pretty quick. It's just 4 or 5 minutes. That's a nap. It's a very short nap that they take. So it just depends on the depth. Some of them longer. The longest dive ever recorded, and they do a lot of recording, they have some very sophisticated instruments. They have instruments that they keep moxie onto the fur. And when the animal carries them around and it comes back and molts, you see, he loses his fur, the instrument falls off his hand. And the researchers out there,
they go out there.
radio, they've got, antennas, they've got their radio gear, and they're out. If they hear a beat, these things are just sick without a beat, they can find it and recover. So they get a month's worth of daily sample. A lot they really know a lot about. There's a lot that they don't know. They might get all the time. There's still a lot. First of all, they don't know, and they're early discoveries. So that's first, they discovered thermals are recently, within a couple of years, that these animals are all diabetic. Sorry that this all has dick up here. The diabetes, dick up. What that diabetes is, their sugar. Is that all it means? Where it's their blood sugar, us, down to level, If it were in high blood, we'd die. And that's weeks. I would fairly have very high sugar. So they've been discovered learning recently about these animals. There's still who a lot of you animals don't get the bend. The people that don't have, they don't have all their airings, so that they have nitrogen, that phenomenon, they blow out well. It used to be, understand, thought that they were very sonar, and it used to find food. There was no, they have a system sonar. The sonar study that told them all about was in built a long whiskey was done, and the seals scanning in tank and drag a foot along at one and the seal would go find fish, And so they say, well, does he see it? Does he hear fish? Does he smell it? So they blind it goes out and finds fish. Go in his ears, shoots, finds fish. So they do everything. Finally, they take two switches down. Everything. The motions in the water from 10 meters, and 20, 30 feet in the water. So it makes enough motion in its track that these whiskers, they're very interesting.
Will they attack humans, or are they fine with them getting close?
You don't get close. They're not mad at you. They're not aggressive to humans at all. They're aggressive to each other. The males are aggressive to other males. So, in fact, there's a law in a federal law and a state law. The Marine Mammal Protection Act says you cannot approach within something, 25 feet, 8 meters or something, that sound right? Of any marine mammal, that means otters and whatever. So you can't approach within 25 feet, from here to that flag. That's as close as you're allowed to get by law. Now, suppose there's two big males. Let's say they're 50 feet apart, and they're snorting at each other. You could go between them, right? Not recommended. They move very quickly on land. They really move quickly, but they don't go very far. They'll overheat. They look like giant slugs moving along on land. And they'll make a run about 10 or 15 feet, and then they have to stop. They have to stop and cool off and breathe a little bit and then go again. So I've been out there many times with guys like you, and here's a big male and he headed our way. Well, we just stroll away. He can't catch up. I mean, he can only go about 10 or 15 feet at speed, and then he has to stop and puff a bit.
How many females are usually around the
The size of the harem. As I mentioned, there's 2 miles of beach out there, so you can have a lot of harems. You can have 10, 15 harems. A typical harem might be 20 animals, or 30, or 40. As the harems grow at this time of year, they start to overlap. And you may see a female and you think, is she part of that harem or that harem? And you don't know. I think she knows, but you can't tell. But the big alpha in the middle, he keeps track. And he tries to scare off all these others. And it appears that the alpha male in the middle of the harem will put up with some subdominant males, some large males around the periphery, because they scare off the next level. They kind of help him guard the place. Very good questions. Ready to go home? One last.